Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes pretty fast if you're the car chick. Now, here she is.
Welcome, everyone, to the 20th episode of The Straight Shift. I can hardly believe that it has been 20 episodes already since I started this podcast last fall. And today, I want to talk about the absolute worst used cars that you can possibly buy in America. Part of my job as a car shopper is to help my clients pick the perfect car for them. And everyone is unique. Everyone has a unique lifestyle. They have a certain budget and they have their personality. And all these things factor into what is the exact right vehicle for any given person at this particular point in their life. And most car buying services, or if you just go to the dealership and look for used cars, they want to sell a car. They might try and help you find a vehicle that meets your needs and what you need the vehicle to do for you, but they don't really talk to you about reliability. They just want to sell what cars on their lot. That's their job, selling cars. But for me, it has always been a personal integrity issue. And as a result, I have taken it upon myself to make it my job to help people make a smart financial decision when it comes to buying cars. Whether it's a new car or a used car, whatever the right solution is for them, it needs to be a smart financial decision. And while I'm not a financial advisor, I don't play one on TV, I am somewhat fiscally conservative myself. And I just think that people need to make smart decisions because I hate to see someone, number one, hate their car, but really hate it because it's costing them an arm and a leg. They're at the dealership all the time, getting it repaired. It's not reliable, and therefore it's disrupting the rest of their life. And so I want to talk today about, here are just some cars that in general, across the board, you probably just want to avoid. Now, I will buy usually whatever car my client wants if they have a really strong preference for a car. And I have a couple of clients right now who feel that way. And I take it upon myself. I feel I have to give them 100 disclaimers and make sure they really understand that the car that they are in love with is a piece of crap and is going to cost them time, money, and headaches in order to own it. That being said, I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I personally drive a 2004 Mini Cooper S, named Maggie, as many of you may know. The 04 Mini Cooper S is on the top 10 list of the absolute least reliable used cars you can possibly buy throughout history. And I know this. I have been very lucky in that Maggie has been relatively well behaved, and I haven't experienced a lot of the problems that other 04 Mini Cooper S owners have experienced. But I also have a very unique lifestyle point in that I am married to an ASE Master Certified Technician. So I don't have the same maintenance costs that the average person does. I have free labor basically, and that's half the battle. The parts are still expensive, and Maggie does give me some headaches, and she gives my husband headaches when he has to work on her. But sometimes, a car, you just love it so much, and gives you so much joy. It's so much fun to drive. It just suits you that you're willing to put up with the cost of ownership. And that's my case. I'm willing to put up with a lot of Maggie's quirks because I do have an in-house technician and because I really do love her that much. And if that is something that my client says, I know it's going to be a pain in the butt. I know the maintenance costs are high. Maybe they've owned them before and they know what they're getting into. That's fine. I have no problem with that. I just want to make sure people go into a car buying decision with their eyes open. They have been forewarned of, here are some of the problems and the costs that you need to anticipate great if you insist on buying this vehicle, because so many people just go by how the car looks, how pretty it is, how great it drives. And they really don't comprehend that they're going to be spending $3,000 every month on maintenance. So I just don't like people to be blindsided by that. So that being said, I'm going to give you a list of cars that if you come to me and say, I want one of these, I am going to do everything in my power to talk you out of it, because these cars are just bad. And I compiled this list based on industry data. I looked at consumer reports and their scores and their opinions based on the feedback they've gotten from owners over the years. I've looked at other industry data. I've looked at Repair Pal. I've looked at the Technical Service Bulletin database, which is a technical database of car problems that is available only to mechanics. I've looked at recalls, and a lot of it is just my personal opinion from what I have seen personally, what my husband has worked on and come home and complained about. So, some of this is my personal and professional opinion, but most of it is backed up by solid industry data of people that have owned these cars, and these are common problems that you see. So without further ado, one of the worst possible cars on the market is the Mitsubishi Mirage. If you haven't seen the Mirage, it's a little tiny econo box, and it's designed to be, you're not going to get a lot of quality in a car that's only about $13,000 brand new. It really is the poster child for you get what you pay for. And they have redesigned it in the last few years, so it is slightly less horrible than it was previously. But, other than the fact that its little wheezy 3-cylinder motor makes a whopping 74 horsepower, so quite frankly, you could probably walk to your destination faster in this thing. The interior is literally made of dirt cheap plastics, so the road noise is horrendous. It rides terribly, but it has the structural integrity of your average soda can. Literally, you can hold on to the door and kind of open and shut the door, and you feel the metal flexing. It's like, what do you do with this thing? When it runs out of gas, do you just crumple it up and throw it away and buy a new one? It's just absolutely horrible. So, that also makes it unsafe. So just don't buy it. Don't buy it. The price tag is not worth it. You are so much better off buying a slightly used, other small car, like any other small car model other than the Mitsubishi Mirage. And it comes in this hideous, like Barney the dinosaur purple that's got to be one of the ugliest things I've ever seen. So just stay away. Another vehicle, a small car that's on this list, unfortunately, is the Fiat 500. And I'm referring to any of the Fiat 500s, the regular 500, the 500C, which is the convertible, the 500L, which is slightly longer, the 500X, which is their little version of a tiny SUV. They're all terrible, which is unfortunate because they're so stinking cute. They've got so much personality, and their interior quality is actually quite nice because they really kind of brought in that, Italian design. So you feel like you're stepping into a Gucci handbag when you drive their top of the line models. But unfortunately, it has that dreaded black circle of doom on Consumer Reports reliability ratings. And, it's got a jerky transmission. The ride can be pretty stiff. The seats, as pretty as they are, can be very uncomfortable. And you get this weird driving position, kind of like you're sitting in one of those child booster seats at a restaurant. So it's a little bit weird and awkward. And don't even get me started on how horrible the clutch is in the manual transmission models. But, unfortunately, this is, Fiat was always known for, it was called Fix It Again, Tony. They have always been known for their horrible reliability. And we were hoping that when the Fiat brand came back to the US several years ago, that they would fix these problems. No, not so much. And unfortunately, you'll kind of see as we go through this list that a lot of these are Chrysler products. And Chrysler just has a lot of quality and reliability problems. They make a lot of very interesting and appealing vehicles. But, if you want something reliable, just stay away from anything made from Chrysler. And, if you love the Fiat 500 from a styling standpoint, If you can lease a new one and then turn it back in, you'll probably have minimal problems. You'll probably still have some recalls and stuff, but if you can lease it new and then not drive it many miles and turn it back in, you may be perfectly okay. You may want to consider the minis instead. Granted, the minis are also not known for their reliability, and being German cars, they can be more expensive to maintain. But again, they're great cars to lease new and then turn in before the miles get to where, you're at around 50,000 miles and the warranty ends and everything, kind of starts to go to heck in a handbasket. So if you like those type of cars, I just recommend, if you're a good lease candidate, lease them new, but buying them used, really not the best idea. Getting into a little bit bigger cars, one of the worst cars on the market, they don't make it anymore. There's a reason they don't make it anymore. And again, it's a Chrysler product, the PT Cruiser. When those came out, they were so cool looking because they had just this little, retro hot rod kind of vibe to them. And they were really cool. But they were really, really terrible, even brand new. They had all sorts of issues. So, you can pick them up dirt cheap on the secondary market, and there is a reason for that. Just stay away. That is one car that if I have a client that comes to me and says, I really would like to find an old PT Cruiser, I just say no. No, you don't. And I will not buy you one. It's one of those that I just put my foot down on. It's absolutely terrible. Now, I had a really good time in one as a rental car many years ago out in California. The suspension is really, really bouncy. And so driving it, like a race car driver around Southern California was hilarious. I had a ball, but, it was a rental car, so I didn't have to maintain it. I just got to abuse it. Continuing kind of unfortunately in the Chrysler line, and I'm not intentionally picking on Chrysler, it's just they do this to themselves, but the Chrysler 200 sedan, it's their small sedan that replaced the Sebring, which is literally on the list of quite possibly one of the most horrible cars ever made in history. I would put it right up there with the Yugo and a Pinto. In fact, I might even take a Pinto over the Sebring. So just stay away from those. The 200, that was, when they redesigned everything and kind of started changing the names of their models. It has this 9-speed transmission, which is designed to try and help you boost your fuel economy. So it's supposed to be in the ideal gear, no matter how fast you're going, to optimize fuel economy. And it doesn't really do that effectively. The result is that you are just never in the right gear to be able to maneuver through traffic at all. It's so clunky. I mean, you'd think with 9 gears to choose from, it could find the right one, but it never seems to do that. Add to that engine problems, squeaks and rattles like crazy because it's such a cheaply made body, and then random electrical issues. This thing will never be anything but a rental car, and a bad rental car at that. The hardtop on these things is even so weak that it's considered a safety hazard. The rollover ratings are absolutely abysmal. And if you're looking for the Sebring convertible, just don't. That is another car that I will put my foot down with my clients and say, no, absolutely not. I will not buy one. If you want one, you're on your own. I don't do that with many cars, but the Sebring and the Sebring convertible, definitely on that list. Well, we are going to take just a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the worst SUVs out there, as well as minivans. So I will be right back in just a sec. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of, or about finding the right car at a fair price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 888-575-2138. That's 888-575-2138. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
car chick is back for more Straight Shift.
And we are back talking today about the worst used cars that you could possibly buy on the secondary market in the United States. And I realized just how many of these I've been talking about have been Chrysler products. And that's just really unfortunate that the US automaker has such reliability issues. And a lot of the American manufacturers do. Many of them have been improved in the last several years, but many of them have also not. So I don't have anything against those corporations. These vehicles have made it onto my list on their own merits. I don't have any bias against the manufacturer other than they continually put out vehicles that have a lot of problems. I want to talk a little about SUVs because SUVs are one of the most popular segments on the market. They've really replaced the station wagon, people that have kids but just can't manage to take that leap and go into the minivan. The SUV is, a little bit cooler, and, you can do a lot of cool things with SUVs, but unfortunately, there are a lot of SUVs out there that have a lot of reliability problems. Now, keep in mind that when you get into larger vehicles, you can't expect them to necessarily have the same reliability and low maintenance costs of, say, a small or mid-sized sedan. SUVs, they're bigger, they're heavier by nature. So even though they have more stronger components that they're made out of, they still take more abuse, just A, due to the weight, and B, due to the things that we make them do. If we take them off road, if we load them up with a whole bunch of stuff, we make the SUVs work a little harder than we do, say our Toyota Camrys. So parts can wear out. You're going to naturally have a little bit lower reliability in these vehicles. So you kind of have to, keep it in perspective that it's all relative. However, there are some that are just flat out unreliable, and especially talking about buying used, just stay away. One of these is the Dodge Journey. And again, Chrysler product, but this is the Journey is not, it's kind of a nifty vehicle. I don't believe I just used the word nifty, but it's a good mid-sized vehicle. It has a reasonably usable third row. It's a good size, and the interior is pretty decent. It's from a family vehicle, it looks like it would be good. But the problem is it also has that dreaded black circle of unreliability from Consumer Reports. It scored really badly in the Institute for Highway Safety's front crash tests. And that's really scary. That's not something that you want in a family vehicle. If you've got your kids in the car, you really want the vehicle to have good crash test ratings, lots of airbags, make sure that we keep our families safe. It also gets terrible gas mileage, like way worse than any other SUV in its class. So, when you combine all of those things, it's just a bad purchase in a used car. And I wouldn't buy them new either. They have they've renamed everything, so the Journey's not really what it used to be, but it's just one of those things that depreciated like a rock. And when you're looking in the used car market and you see vehicles that are cheaper than, say, their counterparts that have the same year and mileage, you have to stop and ask yourself, why is that? Why is this one so much cheaper, than, say, the Toyota Highlander or the Honda Pilot, which would be kind of an equivalent? The reason is because it's a piece of crap and people don't want to pay for it. There's a reason that your Hondas and your Toyotas and vehicles like that hold their value, because people know they're reliable, and you can buy one that's 6 years old and has 100,000 miles on it. And as long as it's been well cared for, it will go another 100,000 miles without giving you too much trouble. Whereas some of these others, they kind of reach 100,000 miles and they're ready to be scrapped. Now, another thing you have to factor in also is that some of the vehicles on this list, they are considered unreliable in their bad used car buys, not necessarily because they were pieces of crap brand new. Granted, a lot of these are, But sometimes, a vehicle, depending on what its price point was in the segment, new, if it was on the lower end, if it was, hey, this is more of an economy buy, the people that were buying them new, they were on a tighter budget. And in many cases, that demographic didn't necessarily do the maintenance. So, while a PT Cruiser, if you bought it new and you really maintained it well and took good care of it, yeah, you'd probably still have some problems, but not as many as, if you bought it used, because the people that owned PT Cruisers just didn't maintain them. That was just, it's one of those vehicles that the people that bought them, most of them did not take care of them. So as a used car, the vehicle has suffered from neglect, and that contributes to the unreliability. So that's just another thing that kind of factors into, how a used car can be a bad buy, is that it's just kind of the redheaded stepchild that nobody loved. No offense to all my redheaded friends out there like Lisa. Love you guys. Now, some vehicles are very expensive and they're on the very high end, and they're still horribly unreliable. The number one on that list is the Range Rover. Range Rovers are beautiful cars. They ride great, and it's one of Britain's most iconic vehicles, although the Brits seem to have like a love-hate relationship with it. They don't buy it because it's reliable. It was first launched back in 1970. I think it's about fourth or fifth generation right now. But ironically, it was never designed to be a luxury vehicle. And it was very utilitarian in its interior. It evolved out of, the old Land Rovers that were truly work vehicles. We drove all over East Africa in Land Rovers. Ironically, off-road, they are one of the most reliable and capable vehicles. It's when you try to drive it to work and to the grocery store and to pick up the kids from school, that's when it breaks down. It's perfectly happy on the African savannah driving over, trails and rocks and lava flows, but, God forbid, straight, smooth pavement, it can't handle it. So, a used Range Rover, it says something when the original manufacturer, Land Rover, will not put an extended warranty on it, or the one that they do, it's like literally $8,000. It's very difficult to find a certified pre-owned Range Rover because they know it's not reliable and they're not going to back it. So that really should tell you something. And it's sad, they're beautiful cars, but you watch movies and you see a lot of your bad guys, the drug dealers, the gangsters, your mobsters, they drive Range Rovers, right? That's because they don't have to worry about reliability. The car's going to get shot up or blown up by the end of the movie anyway, so who cares? But for those of us that actually need to get to work every day and need the vehicle to, be reliable, it's just not the smartest choice. So, combined with it being very unreliable, and it's down to stupid things like, one that's 2 years old, it leaks terribly. The seals are awful. You'll get water if you drive it in the rain a lot. You'll get water building up in the overhead light in your headliner. I mean, just stupid stuff like that. So if you do own one of these, be prepared for it to cost you an arm and a leg on a regular basis. It's like you go to the dealership and you just pay a $5,000 cover charge every time you go. So just plan for that and it'll be a perfectly fine vehicle for you. But if you ask me to buy one for you, I am going to try to talk you out of it. If you insist on buying one, that's fine, but I might actually have you sign a disclaimer saying that you've been warned. In the non-luxury categories, let me talk about another luxury vehicle that you should probably avoid, and that's the Cadillac Escalade. The Escalade, that thing is so pimp. It's beautiful. It rides so well. The interior is just beautiful. I mean, it's a gorgeous vehicle, but it's not that well made. And for some reason, first of all, you got to get past Cadillac's crazy, their maddening infotainment system. It's called CUE, the Cadillac User Experience. I'm sure I could come up with several other things that could stand for, but it's absolutely terrible. But Yeah, the Escalade is really the same vehicle as the Chevy Tahoe, the GMC Yukon. They're all the same vehicle. They're just kind of badged differently in the way they're apportioned and the way the options are put together. The Tahoe and the Yukon, they're not bad on reliability. I mean, mechanically, technically, these vehicles really should be the same reliability wise because their underpinnings are the same. It's the same motor, it's the same transmission. The suspension can be a little different, and that's one of the things that can be a problem in the Escalade. But one of the problems we see with the Escalades is that they are not well maintained by the people who own them. For some reason, the people that love the Escalade don't love doing maintenance. And it's really strange. It's not the same as the people that buy the Tahoes and the Yukons. So this is a situation where it's a vehicle that suffers from some quality issues from the manufacturer, but really suffers from neglect. Now, I have a client up in the DC area. He loves these things. He buys them used, and it's not a bad idea to buy one like slightly used because they have one of the highest depreciation rates. So you might as well buy one that's a year or two old, certified pre-owned, low miles, let someone else pay that depreciation. And he loves them because he's a big guy. He's like 6'2" or 6'3", pretty big guy. And it's just comfortable, and he loves it, and he knows the challenges with them. And really, when you get to about 120 to 150,000 miles, that vehicle's done. It really is. You start to have to replace ridiculously expensive things on it, and you can pretty much stick a fork in it. About 120,000 miles, it'll have, the residual value absolutely bottoms out to next to nothing. It's like just pushing it over a cliff. So if you like the Escalade, really maybe look at the Yukon Denali instead, because for some reason those people seem to maintain them better. But just be aware, you're going to pay a lot, and the cost to own it every single year between the depreciation and your maintenance cost is going to be pretty darn high. If you've got that kind of money to spend and you want something big and comfortable, seriously, look at the Lexus LX. Look at the Toyota Land Cruiser. Those things are amazing, and they hold their value, and they're just ridiculously reliable, but they are also really expensive to start out. And probably the SUV that is the absolute worst in terms of reliability and is horribly risky to buy used is the Jeep Wrangler. First of all, the Wrangler is built to be an off-road vehicle. And if you want an SUV because you like going off-road, you like rock crawling, that really is the perfect vehicle. And when you're crawling over rocks, you're going to be breaking stuff anyway. So reliability really probably isn't at the forefront of your mind. The problem with the Wranglers is, one, they're pretty cheaply made to begin with. Even when you get into the Wrangler Unlimited, the four-door that's kind of souped up, they still kind of skimp at the GM factory on making those. Sorry, not the GM factory, the Chrysler factory. But people who buy the Wranglers never keep them stock. They modify them, whether they actually intend to take them off-road and use them for what they have been designed for, or they just want to look cool like they do. It's like, ooh, I could go off-road, but I never have. They make those modifications, and so many of them, it's young men, and they like to do them themselves. And they often do it wrong. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to call out my own brother. He's technically not my brother. We're not related, but he's my mom's neighbor, and we're family by choice. So my brother, Eddie, I'm talking about you. He fell in love. He does go off-road. He does rock crawl with his cop buddies. So valid reason for wanting a Jeep. But he fell in love with a big four-door Wrangler that he saw on a dealership lot. It was only a couple years old, only had 20,000 miles on it, had a big lift kit on it. It really looked very cool. I understand why he saw the bright, shiny object and bought it. But it looked like, a 2-year-old vehicle with only 20,000 miles. One would think that it would still be under factory warranty. But guess what? That lift kit had been installed by the previous owner himself. He did it very, very badly. He had drilled holes in the wheel wells and other places where you should not drill holes, because now the vehicle was no longer watertight. And then he proceeded to drive it through a swamp. So swamp water got all up in there and started to corrode the wiring harness, and he started having problems with it. So being under warranty, he kept bringing it back to his Jeep dealership. The first owner lived in Florida. And finally, they said, no, these problems were self-inflicted and we are voiding your warranty. So this vehicle, when my brother bought it, had a void warranty. And this is something that you should check because, when a dealer sells a used car, there's a sticker called the as is no warranty unless it is still covered by the manufacturer. So the dealer is not giving any warranties on the car. If it's still under the manufacturer warranty, great. And 99.9% of the people out there would assume that, it's 2 years old, it's only got 20,000 miles on it. It's still under the factory warranty. If you buy a used Jeep, you need to get that VIN number and call Chrysler's customer service number. You can get it off their website and ask them to run that VIN and see if the warranty is still valid, because they have the highest number of voided warranties because people do stupid stuff with Jeeps. And Chrysler has no problem saying, oh, I'm glad you're having fun, but guess what? No warranty. So at any rate, my brother had a ton of problems with his Jeep and poured thousands of dollars into it before I finally got him out of it. And so that's why if you are looking for a used Jeep, particularly a used Jeep Wrangler, be very, very careful. If it has any aftermarket parts on it, you need to know who installed them. Was it installed properly? What was this vehicle? Did somebody drive it through a swamp? You have such a high risk because of what people do to and with their Jeeps. So I just say, unless you really need one to go off-road, just maybe think of something else. So finally, I want to just cover minivans. The Chrysler Town & Country minivan and its cousin, the Dodge Caravan, they've now combined them on all, and it's now called the Chrysler Pacifica. They rebadged everything, and it's very confusing. But basically, the Chrysler minivan, it's not a bad van, and you get a lot of cool features with it when you buy them new, but it depreciates really, really rapidly. And some of the problems that we've seen with them, particularly the used models over the years, Chrysler products are known for weird electrical issues. We have one of these now. We're on our third, actually, Dodge Caravan, and my father-in-law now owns the one that I had. We kept it in the family, but it's his third one. And the first one he had was a 96, and it had been maintained religiously. And yet one day at about 150,000 miles, the transmission, the internal planetary gears, just did a spontaneous high-speed disassembly and went kablooey, and it was done. Similarly, the next one they had, it just had random electrical issues. The car would have seizures. I was driving it and I was going through an intersection at a traffic light, making a left-hand turn across traffic, and the whole car just lost power. And when the whole car just loses power and you're at speed, especially when you're trying to turn, you lose steering, you lose everything. And I'm sitting there desperately trying to get the car to restart as I'm careening towards this telephone pole. And it was just something, there was a seizure in the wiring harness that nobody could find, and the only way to fix it would be to replace the wiring harness for the whole car, which they didn't make anymore. So mechanically, a perfectly good van, we had to scrap because of a random electrical issue. And that is unfortunately something that plagues a lot of Chrysler products and some GM products. So that's a minivan to avoid. Honestly, clients call me and they say they want a minivan. I say, great. You like the Honda or the Toyota better? That's really, in my opinion, the only two choices in the market. So I've talked a lot about, some really bad used cars out there. I hope if you're car shopping, you will avoid those like the plague. Kind of overall, German cars are very expensive to maintain. They have varying degrees of reliability, and they strongly depend on how well they have been maintained. And the maintenance intervals that the manufacturer recommends are often wholly insufficient, and that contributes to their unreliability. So be aware if you're buying a used European car or a new one that you plan to keep for a long time, just plan to have a very healthy maintenance savings account. American cars, sadly, are not known for their reliability. It can be very hit or miss by year and model. There's some really good ones out there, but an American car going over 200,000 miles without a lot of effort and money is not that common. Again, if you want reliability and low cost of maintenance, number one, Toyota. Seriously. I mean, you can almost never, ever, ever go wrong with a properly maintained Toyota. And similarly in the luxury category, Lexus. Honda is probably second after that. Honda has had some years with some issues. There were some years, the Odyssey, that had some engine issues. There were some years, the CR-V, that had a design flaw in the air conditioning system. You should avoid those. But for the most part, Honda has been really good. Nissan's really hit or miss. Hyundais and Kias have been getting a lot better really since about their redesigns in 2011 that started. They've been getting way better, but they still have some issues. There were some engine design flaws in certain 2011 to 2014 Hyundai and Kia models. There was a huge recall on that. So, do your homework, and that's the bottom line. Do your homework. If you're looking for a used car, you need to look at Consumer Reports. It's well worth the membership fee for the year. Look at, recalls for the year. Look at, there are some websites that can give you some insights into technical service bulletins. Look at things like RepairPal. What are some of the common problems associated with these cars? Common problems does not necessarily mean there was a recall. In fact, usually there wasn't, because it takes a lot to get to the level of a recall. So really just do a lot of digging. Don't just research on the surface. Dig deep on these cars to know what's going to be reliable and what's not. I hope this was helpful, folks. Thanks for listening to the 20th episode of the Straight Shift. And it's Friday. I can't talk anymore. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so I am out of here. Have a happy and safe Labor Day weekend.
The Straight Shift podcast is copyright LeeAnn Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of LeeAnn Shattuck or The Car Chick.